Good morning again, everyone. We are going to call to order the Community and Economic Development Department Small Business Programming Workshop. And we will begin by doing, go around and letting everybody know who's in the room here. So what if we start with Raphael?
Raphael Ortega, District 5.
Hope Evans, District 1.
Rena Moran, District 4.
Ryan O'Connor, County Manager.
Sherry Collins, CED.
Josh Olson, Community Economic Development.
Claudia Klinkhammer, Community and Economic Development.
Trista Martinson, District 3, Commissioner.
Victoria Reinhardt, District 7, Commissioner.
Mai Chong, District 6.
Oh, if we go to Jason.
Jason, County Manager's Office.
Councilor, Commissioner Brother's Office. Government Relations. Fiona Yang with
Thank you. Well, the purpose of today's workshop is to provide an update about the small business programming and have a discussion and get some feedback from the board. We'll begin by discussing the existing small business programs, but I think what's really exciting about today is discussing a new resource for the small business support, a federal earmark, which was received to create a small business reimagination center. Now, how much more exciting can it get than that? Anyhow, we'll discuss the ecosystem also of the business advisors. So we'll kick it off with Josh Olson and giving us the small business programming update. That's what I was told.
Yep, we changed it up.
Okay, keep me on my toes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I think you summed it up nicely. You know, our intent is to talk about what existing programs do we currently have and where we intend to go in the future. So we're kicking off 2024 with kind of a renewed focus, if you will, on all things small business and on the county has had a very understandable focus on deploying deeply affordable housing, and that has really been our intent in uplifting the HRA levy, the ARPA resources, and the strategies within the housing realm of the Economic Inclusion Plan. But now, with additional staffing capacity and resources, we're starting to pivot and say, how do we ensure that the strategies within the economic competitiveness are resourced and that we continue the good work that we did back during the height of the pandemic we learned a lot, as Josh and Claudia will talk about, and we want to carry that forward. So with that said, we'll start here. The three kind of main areas of business support and growth, and really the three areas that were within the proposal for the congressional earmark are around entrepreneurial support, small business growth, and site marketing and attraction. As you know, we've used our Ramsey County Means Business tool as a way to essentially attract individuals to redevelopment properties initially, and then it quickly, within about 3 months, became the main source within the region, within the east side, for navigating COVID-related small business. And now we're kind of looking to get back. We're looking to get back in terms of the array of small business and then we'll talk about that momentarily. I'll Deputy Director Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So, you know, as Carrie discussed, you know, we have kind of these core bucket, we kind of themes within our office that we discuss. And so I'll kind of step through these themes, and we do actually have an existing program or initiative within each one of these areas, but they each have areas of growth and opportunity, and we'll try to relay that, and then we'll kind of segue into a conversation on the Reimagination Center, because it does fall right back or connect right back to these themes. So within our entrepreneur support, our kind of central program is our Open to Business program. This was a partnership that was formed in 2019, again, right before many of things changed, but it is with the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers. And it is a program that provides direct technical assistance and other forms of support to small businesses and small business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs at no cost. Unlike many of our CED programs, this is a program that there is no geographic limitation. So if a business owner resides in Ramsey County, or they intend to open a business in Ramsey County, this is a program that is afforded to them. Our Luis Mendoza is our is our representative within MCCD, who provides support across the county. But I want to preface that by saying Luis is not the only employee within MCCD, and he often will look to his colleagues. And we'll kind of discuss this here in a minute, but like in the event that there is a aspiring entrepreneur who has a special need or request that he can't fulfill, he will move it to a colleague of his. And they work very collaboratively. Tyler Hilsbeck is the representative within Washington County, but yet Tyler and Luis and the representatives for Hennepin County and others, they work hand in hand to kind of make sure that businesses are getting the right resources. So since its inception in late 2019, Open to Business has steadily increased its businesses served. So we wanted to provide just a little bit of a current snapshot. These are a year old. Our information for 2023 is coming in, and that will be a part of our annual report in the next couple months. But, you know, what I want to call out in this is while we are steadily increasing in every single one of these categories, and in terms of the number of businesses that participate in this programming year in, year out, the number of hours that the businesses are asking for and are able to provide, as well as the diversity within is steadily growing. So even since 2020, we had about 8% in many of those categories. So you can see that year over year, we've seen a steady increase. And I think that is certainly where we are charting and working with MCCD to do that. I'll just acknowledge, and I think Claudia will kind of probably lean into this a little bit more. Often when there is an aspiring entrepreneur or small business who's coming in, they may have already been consulting with a cultural community or an industry-specific organization that is very tailored to their needs. So, for example, while Luis has some deep connections within the Latinx community, and our prior business advisor, Noah Herr, within the Hmong community, you know, there is certainly opportunities to go work with the Black Women's Wealth Alliance, Women's Venture, the Hmong American Partnership, Hmong American Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce. You know, there's lots of, this ecosystem is pretty broad, and we'll talk about it. But the one thing that we have heard through our feedback is from our city partners is absolutely our city partners love this service. This is a service that is unlike most other business services that we have in the region, in that it's pretty low bar entry point. If you want some high level review of your business plan, it's there. If you want to come in and sit down with Luis and just kind of ping some ideas off of it, that's where it can start, and then it can kind of progress from there. The opportunity that MCCD also provides is they are a consortium of community developers. So they use their membership to broaden connection points, and then they do have financial tools that they can deploy with.
Commissioner Martinson.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Josh, is to share an example of how well this is working. So MCCD and Luis and Noah Herr before have worked really closely with the consortium together, and they worked really hard to do the business corridor along Rice Street, especially as we're looking at future development along the corridor on transit lines. But they worked with the Lopez family, and they own Chiqui's grocery store on Rice Street. And they have now opened 2 new restaurants on Rice Street because of the partnership with MCCD and a development plan. They have the best tacos in St. Paul, which is a competition in itself, at Trompera, El Zac, and then they're also open what used to be the Coffee Cup that burnt years ago and has sat empty, and they're redoing it. And it was all in partnership because of this work. And then, you know, on that corridor, the Nepali grocery, they've worked with the several other cuisines in the Burmese and Nepali community as well along the corridor. So it really has been where community has said, this is the thing that's the game changer. And they are also working with biz recycling hand in hand. So I think this is a really important aspect, is that as we have funded many programs to help businesses in many ways, they're really working to connect all those dots. So if they're doing a business plan, they're talking about, you know, reducing waste as part of the business plan. So it's been a great partnership, and I just wanted to highlight that.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I do want to say, and Josh, you're probably, I think the only other feedback we've heard from the city is, they want more. They want more, they want more, they want more. Individuals, business advisors serving their communities. And so we've always said, how do we blow this up, right? And how do we create opportunities for more business advisors to get out there and be working with, connect them with capital, and to also give them early stage resources, where to begin.
Commissioner Jean.
I just had a question for this then, are we funding like a position, position through this too, and or is this like a contracted partnership with, MCCD?
Madam Chair, Commissioner John, this is a contracted partnership with MCCD, so it's approximately $225,000. And that essentially, we do have a dedicated staff member there within MCCD, and then we have a broader roster that individuals can kind of. So there is not a contracted staff member on this side. That sole purpose is to oversee the MCCD contract, though we do that across all of our business programs.
Okay, and so just to clarify then, like if I have people that comes to my office, then I could just refer them to MCCD?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
You can certainly reach out to us and we'll funnel them to Luis, or you go right to Luis. And then as things arise with Luis, if he has some particular questions or concerns, he communicates those back to us. He has full awareness of our programs, and so that's why sometimes he'll refer us back to the individual. And I think that's part of it. That's an area of feedback that we are learning as we're going along, and we'll talk about it a little bit. But it's a thing we're learning through our watching, in some ways, of what Hennepin County is doing with a program of theirs, where they have a more robust set of coalition of business partners and organizations. But one thing they've learned is really that how the referrals happen and how effective they and how sustained they are is a really so this is a program that is funded through the general levy. So that is why you'll see at the bottom of the screen, one thing I just wanted to make sure, because you may see similar slides into the future for all of our other programs where those little things will light up to show where our programs are funded. But in this particular, it is funded through a small allocation through our general.
So as a follow-up to that, one person covers the entire county?
Correct.
Madam Chair,
Oh, wow.
Commissioner.
Yeah.
With the caveat that is a dedicated business advisor, but then you do gain advisors in a niche industry that needs specialized support or a language barrier. Okay. So you do get access to, we'll say, their bench. So
But he's the point person?
He's the point, yeah.
Okay. And I assume that the services have been utilized countywide?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know the transformation on Rice Carpenter is amazing, so.
Yeah.
And not surprising, part of our annual report last year, we showed a little bit of a breakout of where those services are. They obviously tend to be a little bit more St. Paul resident focused, but again, I want to acknowledge in the moment that, we're serving an individual who may, live in a particular jurisdiction, but have a business somewhere else or vice versa. So there's a lot of crossover, and we've learned that through the time. Certainly at the beginning, I remember there was a series of business owners who resided in New Brighton and because there was a lot of questions about, but they had a lot of businesses interests in different parts of the metro, and so they're asking about eligibility.
Oh, finally, I think one of the really interesting things for me is just also seeing the businesses that utilize our service here and expand, similar to the stories that Chair Martinson, Commissioner Martinson had shared already too. But that would be really great to see too in the future about the type of actual real impact we're having.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner. I think that's an opportunity for us within our annual report to kind of highlight some of those businesses. And we Not to say we haven't done it, we definitely, this is a part of an area where we want to be better at in terms of our marketing of that program, because business owners will look at their peers to see if it's working for them. So one of those critical areas, in addition to what I have up there, but we did sought some feedback from our city partners and other community partners as how the Open to Business program could kind of, be revamped, kind of go through, its maturation, as we're almost to the 5-year time frame of that. And so, certainly better marketing. This is a program that works really well, and certainly the word gets out. But we certainly rely heavily on our city partners, who often are maybe a step closer to that particular business. One of the things that wasn't as heavily marketed, and I'll say during the pandemic, it made it really hard to do this, and that was in person, face-to-face, drop-in hours. And so those do exist. We just recognize through this feedback with our partners, that city partners in particular, that we need to publicize that a little bit more, and we intend to do that moving forward into the future. Certainly the city partners, as I mentioned before, have been champions of this, and really have sought the true value of this program. Certainly they recognize that it is the only program in town that kind of does something like this. But one of its limitations, as we've kind of spelled out, is, we have one person who's really kind of solely focused on it. Every business, so this is one thing we've learned, businesses post-pandemic are coming in with a lot different set of needs. Some of it's around real estate, which wasn't necessarily the first thing that came to mind before the pandemic. It was maybe more around business planning and high-level stuff, technology. And so, I think as we look forward into the future, I think the coalition approach of our business advisors and kind of building upon Open to Business, and that's not to say Open to Business is going away. This is about layering in these pieces and creating a much tighter ecosystem within the East Metro, is that set of business advisors, have a wide array of skills that they can provide businesses. And I want to point to a particular example. It does not show up on the screen, but that we've tackled a little bit as Ramsey County, and that's within our Emerging and Diverse Developers Program. You think of that maybe as it's come through the door as more of a housing program, but this is really a business-first program. It's really encouraging and strengthening emerging developers and their growth and as business owners. Certainly, it's got a strong tie back to our work here, but that's a particular program that is very industry-specific, and that's a particular thing that we've been thinking about. Other areas of particular focus that we've been eyeing for into the future, certainly around green jobs, green infrastructure. We have a very rich community here in the East Metro in particular for creative businesses. We partnered during the Small Business Relief Fund, you may recall this, with 2 organizations, the Metropolitan, and I'm going to blank on, Regional Arts Coalition, as well as Springboard for the Arts, to particularly, one, uplift individuals who are within that creative business sector, who don't necessarily have employees, but they are a critical piece of our local infrastructure, and helping them through a really difficult time. And that's sometimes missed, and I will acknowledge, I think we were kind of a leader in this area, where I know that even Hennepin County follows our eligibility after the fact to include creative businesses too, because I think they were acknowledging in that moment that a lot of artists, a lot of performers, a lot of folks were out of work, or they had to adjust to a changing landscape because of COVID. So again, technical assistance certainly is sorely needed, and this is an area that we hopefully through the Small Business Reimagination Center, you'll see more of this and expanded, but additional capital is always a critical piece. It's one thing to be able to help support a business with some technical challenges, concerns that they might have, but the next piece is the opening up of capital, which certainly within our ECI plan, it very clearly illustrated that the access to capital, especially within our Black business community, is very, very difficult.
Yeah, Commissioner Shaw.
Sorry, one last thing to add too is this connected in with like our workforce solutions too, and some of the initiatives that they have around supporting businesses, like retain and attract talent?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner, yes, I'm going to say yes, broadly yes, but I think the acknowledgement is at this stage, these are very early stage businesses, may be the only workforce for that idea or for that business. As I get to the next one slide that I'll get to, it talks about kind of that next tier of businesses, which are really kind of the ones who maybe established their business plan and now are kind of going ramping up.
Commissioner Moran?
Before we get to the next, I'm still trying to learn what it is that MCCD does do now. So I'm still not clear. What I heard they don't do is they don't do technical support, or they don't do capital investments, you know, because that's what I wrote down. And so is that true? And then what do they specialize in?
Apologies if I cobbled together a couple of things,
Okay.
Commissioner Moran, but no, MCCD and through the Open to Business program provides free technical assistance to any businesses who come to need.
Okay.
Because they are a consortium of community developers, so like neighborhood development centers are probably one of the most well-known ones here within the East Metro. They have access to capital. So they can package in, so if a business they feel like has moved to the next tier and is ready, you know, they've built a solid business plan and maybe they want to open a restaurant, they can help pair that with a capital financial tool to that business. It's usually low-cost financing tools that come through them, but it's really from the Small Business Administration.
And where are they located?
MCCD is located, its headquarters, its main office is in South Minneapolis, but Luis and many other police are all over. So they set up office hours usually at multiple places within.
Okay, they're in South Minneapolis. So I asked that question because I kind of like pride myself on knowing what's available, especially for small businesses. And I wanted to go through the COVID part and how that impacted businesses. But the first year or two, it's always very tough for new businesses, right? And I can't say that I really have heard much about MCCD versus an NDC or NEON or other entities that are located here in like St. Paul or Ramsey County. Not that I'm saying, I'm clearly hearing that they're doing some good work somewhere, but how do people learn about them?
Commissioner Moran, I think you raise a good point. I think MCCD does have a regional lens, so they have contracts with all of the kind of 7-county metropolitan area. And so I think it does oftentimes lose that local feel.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point about kind of marketing and promotion, you know, we'll get to that in a bit. In addition to MCCD, in addition to the NDCs, in addition to Urban Village, CAP, you know, all of the kind of, we'll call it small business support organizations that serve our area, we intend to promote and market this coalition approach so that people do understand when they talk about the Ramsey County Small Business Reimagination Center, they understand who the coalition is, who's involved, and how they can gain access to advisory services or even flexible capital. Because to your point, I think we have had a kind of arm's length away distance in terms of that local feel, in terms of, we had that through the Small Business Relief Grant time period because we did have 14 benefiting, you know, doing outreach, doing technical assistance on our behalf. And we're hoping to reinstate that through this congressional earmark we're able to. I do want to circle back on one question. This intent too is really to take all of the areas within the county that are providing not just workforce solutions, but libraries, that they host environmental health and the biz recycling, and then procurement is looking to do more in terms of saying, how do you contract with the county? How do you do business with the county? Our intent is to create this kind of one-stop shop, if you will, for the business community to understand both doing business with the county and where can I receive resources to grow, evolve, and develop my business.
And how old is this program? I mean, this partnership that Ramsey County has with MCCD?
Since late 2019.
Since 2019, okay. And I don't know if you answer how a person learn about MCCD? Or business learn about them? Where do they have to go to know?
To know about it?
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, so that information is accessible through certainly the county's websites, the main county website, as well as our Ramsey County Means Business website, funnel folks who have questions. I would also just acknowledge to your question, because I think it actually does reinforce a piece that comes up, that will show up more directly within the Ramsey County Reimagination Center slides. Within our East Metro, we have a very, very fractured business ecosystem. And often, MCCD is a consortium of many community groups. And so some folks a business owner may come into a partner organization that is a part of MCCD. Again, I'll use NDC, Neighborhood Development Center, as an example. And they may never know about the broader apparatus because they're getting what they need at NDC. And so I think what we learned certainly during the small business release phase of our work is that we absolutely have a fractured system. The conversations that exist between it aren't always there. Handoffs between cities and organizations are not always, the follow-through is not always there. And so, I think this is not a kind of a rain on a parade that this exists across the entire metro area. I would just say that it exists in Hennepin County, even within a more established ecosystem where you have the Mitas and the Neons and some others, but it still exists. And so I think what we see as part of, that's why the reimagination part is part of there, is to kind of be a more cohesive system, because as the ECI plan states, we have some goals and objectives to grow businesses. And one of those ways is we need to be a much tighter knit group than what we were before. The fractured system only works for those who already know that those services exist.
Okay, Commissioner Martinson has a follow-up.
I was just gonna tell you, Rena, just context-wise, so MCCD, along with Habitat for Humanity and the Coalition of the Homeless, started the Homes for All Coalition. This is how long they've been around and connected with community. And it was because they had these developers that were in their consortium. And so a lot of times, as Josh was saying, people don't go directly to MCCD, they go to one of the partners, but it's like the umbrella, like a coalition. But they've been active and around the legislature, so if you think back, you probably have interacted with all of them at different times, but maybe not in this context.
No, it's not that I have not heard of them, but I didn't know of them.
Yeah.
Being like in St. Paul, or even maybe Ramsey County, unless it's the suburban parts of it.
Yeah, and we don't do ourselves any justice too in this, in that we kickstarted the Open to Business program in 2019, and the city of St. Paul had an Open for Business program. So we've constantly, not that we're competing against each other, but we've been constantly trying to find resources and opportunities for businesses. Sometimes they get commingled and they miss the mark. So I think where Commissioner Zhang kind of was leading us a little bit and asking about how businesses, so one of the other pieces of feedback we definitely learned within our questions of our city partners around Open to Business is, one thing, businesses have different needs, and especially emerging businesses and businesses that are more well-established, that's what we kind of classify them as more second-stage businesses. Employment, the attraction and retention of employees is absolutely critical to this. So this is where there is some things that are happening with Workforce Solutions. I think our goal is to strengthen that over the next phase here. But the CEO Next Business Institute program is a partnership that we've had with Hennepin County. So its prior name used to be Economic Gardening. It evolved into CEO Next. It's a long story there as to why the changes in name, but suffice to say, this is a program that we regularly participate in with Hennepin County. And, we've had some pretty good success. We do have some examples within our metro CEOs who have participated in this and then moved on, built a bigger business, done some bigger things. And so we've seen some, certainly we've asked of the partnership, that we have intentionality here in, really bringing businesses up. And so we've also seen steady increases within our diversity of our programming in this area. It's not a very big program. Yearly, we have 8 businesses that we support with about $10,000. It's actually a free program for the business. What they get through this cohort program is at the end of that cohort, they get some free, very deliberate technical assistance that they might have. So again, it might be a little bit about workforce. In the past, it was some businesses wanted to grow in a slightly different sector and were unclear. They didn't have the data. So this money helps to pay for that. Really an area of feedback that we've heard, certainly with our conversations with Hennepin County, is it's a great program, but we're missing a tier of businesses that have moved out of that entrepreneurial stage, but have not hit that kind of second tier where they've got like 10 employees. They're really doing a significant. So there's a tailored area, there's an area within that, businesses who are kind of trying to ramp up, trying to scale, and aren't clear, they probably benefit from some of that cohort learning. And so an evolution that we've been discussing with them, and Hennepin County has certainly already started this. I think their first cohort was this past fall, is called CEO Now. And so this is that space in between, really, that open to business program service, really early, and CEO Next, which is more of an established business. So it's kind of in that space.
Okay, help me out here. I need a little help here. Okay, CEO Next Business Institute. So are you presenting this as Ramsey County? Are you presenting this as the partnership you have with MCCD? Who's leading here? So I can better understand where we are.
Madam Chair, Commissioners. So the Open to Business program, that's for individuals looking to develop a business plan and start a business. That's a contract through the Metropolitan Consortium. Developers, that's that. So that's one program we have. On to the next program. This is a partnership with Hennepin County. So we set aside some funds and kind of.
We've been Ramsey County.
Ramsey County, yep, and these are all Ramsey County programs.
Okay.
Ramsey County's program is CEO Next with
Mm-hmm.
Hennepin County. We do this kind of cross promotion to attract businesses into a cohort each year.
Okay.
And so then what Josh is describing then is, so we've got early stage entrepreneurs, through programming, through Open to Business. We have established businesses looking to grow strategically. And
you have 8 businesses that you're working with.
Approximately.
You're focused on. Okay.
And then there's this gap. And
Okay.
it's, okay, well, I've got my LLC.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start my business. That's another potential opportunity with Hennepin County called CEO.
Okay.
And so as we look at the continuum of small business offerings, those are where we're trying to hit all of those gaps.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Mayor.
Yep, all right.
Oh, Commissioner, thank
I was waiting to see if I'm asking the question ahead of time. But it seems to me that there's a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to get some demographics on the type of businesses. you keep mentioning a lot of, it's always, especially in people of color, it's always restaurants and it's always construction business. I think there's a whole big waterfront out there and that we're not connecting with. So that's one thing. So I'd like to see some demographics as to the type of businesses we're talking about. The other is, it seems to me that for lack of a better word, Ramsey County needs to focus more on being the navigator than all these, because the bureaucracy of these programs is becoming huge, it seems to me. Yeah, it's a good thing, right? I mean, that's the good thing is there are a lot of resources out there. The downside is you're talking about even a young person with a college degree coming out that wants to be an entrepreneur. This is a whole lot of maze. I mean, you would need somebody to, somehow we need to lay out the map for this.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, you raised a good point, and I think as we go through the rest of the presentation, now we have a blank canvas right now. And the Small Business Reimagination Center, to your point, Commissioner, is that map. And so it's to say all of these programs are essentially navigation programs. The Small Business Reimagination Center is like, the hope, though, is to have a coalition of business advisors able to navigate businesses. There's an industry niche, a geography niche, or a cultural or language, specification that the business needs, that we have a full array of advisors, much like we do with trusted messengers for the business community. And so I think the Small Business Reimagination Center is that hub, navigating to capital, but we're not interested in doing small business relief grants. We're interested in attracting small businesses to the programs that already exist. So I think we're on the same page there.
Okay, because that whole map has to be clear to everybody around this table, just to connect with communities and be helpful to you. Because what we're getting is the pieces, and we got to get the whole vista here, and how would that work? And the reason why I asked, and then my question about the demographics, about what kind of, is really important, because it amazes me. I know some young people of color that got an engineering degree, and they're not going to get jobs with firms right away. They'd rather start their own business. And the niches of these businesses, of what somebody with an engineering degree could do, but how do they get started, It seems to me this is the kind of program that I want to see them up. Not that hey, believe me, I think the restaurants and the construction business is all great, but I think that waterfront is much broader, and we need to try and capture as many of those ones as possible.
Well, and I think, even just looking at the funding sources, that was a huge improvement to, when you apply for something, all of those different funding sources, all the different regulations and rules associated with them, to have someone come in the door and say, well, which one do you want to apply for? Switching that around and saying, okay, what do you want to do, and let's see what fits. And that was a huge, I know it was a heavy lift, but well worth it.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and we'll absolutely give you kind of a much richer, I know that there's a little bit of information out on the Open Data Portal as part of our last annual report that gives, on the Open to Business program in particular, a little bit of a glimpse at where the hours are going. And we are absolutely retail heavy, retail and small business kind of personal services kind of thing. Within the CEO Next, I think it's a broader array. Certainly recall from past program participants, one was Head Cycling out in the, now I think they're now in Oakdale in terms of where their manufacturing plant was. So there is a little manufacturing, light manufacturing, molecular biology company who is I think really kind of at the cutting edge on, I think it's on connected to food. again, this is showing you, there's some, like, businesses that have very strong niches, and you can imagine if you're coming in with that idea, that business plan, to a person who has no awareness of that particular kind of business as an industry, that can be a challenging place and kind of a brick wall. And so, I mean, certainly, this is an area where we've discussed and what we learned very early on in the small business relief. And really, this is businesses who are in their, time of need, certainly asking for some additional support. But we did get a wide swath of individuals and businesses who come in and say, yeah, we support, and you're like, didn't know this was a business. I didn't know this was, something that had 10 employees, 50 employees. So I think not to say we intentionally did this, but we've mined a lot of information and data over the last several years that I think is setting the stage up for this new ecosystem, this new, I think Carrie said it best, navigation system and navigating up. So just moving next to the slide very quickly, because I do want to allow some time for Claudia to walk through these slides on the Reimagination Center. But our third program that we have is related in that marketing and attraction. So RamseyCountyMeansBusiness.com is our kind of clearinghouse, our portal, regional portal for all information. It was adapted during COVID to become a navigator of all the resources that were coming down from lots of different places. So we really truly became the place where people came to kind of make sense of all the resources that may have been afforded to them or available to them. Ramsey County Means Business, we started it. We had to completely retool it overnight during the pandemic. It's now time for us to do a refresh, and that's what we intend to do in 2024. We have a strong partner in Workforce Solutions who's been doing inserting a lot of new modules within this program. So there's a workforce training hub, there's an online job board, certainly great evolutions. The area that we've been kind of honing in on is embedding property listings within this. So again, as I mentioned before, one of the things we've learned is that real estate listings and what's available is a really key thing that businesses are asking for as they're coming out of pandemic. What are some really good spaces? What are some good opportunities? And so that's a thing that we had forged a conversation early on with MNCAR. Sorry for the acronym. It's the Minnesota Commercial Association. I'm going to this one. MNCAR. They do real estate listings, and they're and so they hold that service, and we're going to embed that within the website moving forward. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to work with our city partners to uplift key parcels and properties and developments that they really see great value.
I just want to pause for one moment because not that we need to spend another hour on this, but I have our our lunch and learn starting at 12:30.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure because so we have time. Usually we have them at noon, so I just wanted to make sure that I had it correct and that others knew that we have time.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So I am here to talk about the Small Business Reimagination Center. So wanted to start by providing a little bit of context around sort of that center and the funds that we received. So we received $1.5 million in a congressional earmark, and as part of that application, the county has also pledged a matching $500,000. We are talking about a $2 million pool of funds available to create this center. So just kind of wanted to level set with that is the budget. We have a budget. So the Reimagination Center was intended to strengthen the business ecosystem and that served as a critical lifeline during the pandemic. So I really want to tie closely. This is a direct result of both the ECI plan and what we learned during the pandemic. And this is all stuff that Director Collins and Deputy Director Olson have been talking about. You're going to hear a lot of the same themes from me as I talk about this center as well. One thing that is important to note with this center is that the application was supported by a couple of key partners, including the Business Resource Collective, which is from the Alliance for Metro Stability, located in Minneapolis,
It's also supported by the Center for Economic Inclusion, located in downtown St. Paul, and then also the St. Paul Chamber. So those are partners that we are going to be.
Is it a physical space? I'm
No,
sorry.
it's a virtual space.
Okay,
Yeah.
the word center
Yeah.
in all of our
Yeah.
county language is a physical space,
Yeah.
so that's my one bit of feedback, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, definitely confusing, and I think, the center doesn't exist, right? Yeah, so like, we're here to talk about it, like, hear what your priorities are and figure out how we're going to, most effectively, create this, so that, it affects the Ramsey County. So, and I highlight that relationship, though, with those partners, because, they will certainly be brought along as we, build out this center, this virtual center as well, and be part of the conversation, which we have had ongoing conversations with them as well, and then also just a reminder, and I think that, maybe mentioned earlier already, but that Business Resource Collective was also a key partner in deploying the relief grants, business relief grants, to ensure that, folks that own small businesses, and needed culturally specific and language specific and industry, outreach received that. And so as a result of that, we were able to deploy, I think, almost half of the business relief grant funds to diverse owned businesses. So,
Can I just, okay, so it is a virtual center. Is it ever intended to be anything other than a virtual center?
We could talk a little bit about that. I think let's maybe go through the slides so
All
that
right,
we won't kind
sorry.
of, yeah. No, you would.
I'm
Yep.
getting ahead of
We
myself
do a lot of
here.
prompting here
That's
with these slides.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the opportunity that we have, it was laid out in the ECI plan, and we have an opportunity to really improve our business ecosystem. I'm sure you've seen the statistics sort of on the screen already, so I won't take the time to read through those. But, another way to look at this is, we are trailing in BIPOC-owned business growth, and if we create an additional 500 business starts, that would generate an additional 6,690 jobs. So it's a big opportunity, and so I think we have, finally have some resources to move forward with this, and so, really excited to be looking at this and having this conversation. So just want to quickly review some gaps and limitations that exist currently in our ecosystem, and these next two slides are going to focus primarily on three key buckets. So this is based on feedback that we've heard, from partners, as a result of the business relief grant, and, follow up there, and then also, through the ECI plan development. So building capacity, and that's specifically referring to building capacity with our community-based organizations. So these are the organizations that are delivering services, and so so we need to increase capacity with those partners, largely in part because all of this kind of starts with them, right? If they don't have resources to grow, how are we supposed to support more businesses? And as a number of commissioners have already observed today, right, like we have Open to Business, and they are doing a huge body of work, but that is pretty much it. We have Open to Business. And so, we need to be able to invest in capacity of our community-based organizations who will be delivering these services. So that's sort of the foundation. The next step is the technical assistance and business support, and that's the actual work that they will be, doing, the hours that those community-based organizations will be spending with businesses to give them advising on their business plan, to give them advising on marketing, to deliver the trainings, the CEO cohorts. And so that is kind of that next bucket. And then finally, we have, the flexible capital and strategic investment. And, it all, obviously comes back to the money when the rubber hits the road. It's great to give these businesses support, but access to capital is, a huge area of opportunity. There's, always a need. But I think one thing that we also learned in some of, our surveys is that city partner finance programs are always oversubscribed. So that whether loan or a grant, they are always oversubscribed. The need is just so great because businesses need money to get open. And so, one thing also related to that is very rarely do we see small businesses open with one funding source. Oftentimes, it is a myriad, it's a stack of various partners that come to the table, which kind of points us back to our need for a really strong ecosystem, right? Because if we have the city of St. Paul and we have MCCD and we have Ramsey County all sitting together in, you know, a pile and we're all trying to fund the same business, we need to be communicating, we need to be working closely and making it as easy as possible, you know, leaning on our expertise to make this possible to support the small business
A
owner.
question.
Commissioner Rand.
What is considered the East Metro?
I would say east of the Mississippi River, Commissioner.
I need more details.
So
What I mean.
Dakota County, east of the Mississippi River, Ramsey County, Washington County would be, yeah. I mean, those are usually the counties that would be considered that.
So that's the focus, like, yeah, with this, what we're doing here. Okay.
I mean, it's Ramsey County, it's Ramsey County business.
For us,
Southeast.
Ramsey
Yeah.
County, we're not
Yeah.
thinking about the other counties.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. I mean, East Metro, Madam Chair, Commissioner, I would define that East Metro is anchored by the city of St. Paul as the downtown hub, and then a suburb that generally feeds St. Paul more than they feed Minneapolis. And so you could think of it also as like the Pioneer Press home zone relative to the Star Tribune. These things have changed some over
The
time,
St.
but
Paul area chamber
correct.
covers that St. Paul adjacent counties.
Okay.
And so this next slide just is some additional information about kind of, you know, why we need better coordination in our ecosystem. You know, and there's some specific anecdotes from our research included in this next slide. But again, you know, starting with that building capacity piece, you know, our community-based organizations are oversubscribed, and that has an impact on the businesses, you know, who need the support, because then they either get referred elsewhere or they don't get the support. Those community-based organizations aren't able to market, you know, what they offer. And kind of, you know, Commissioner Moran, to your question earlier, how do we know? Well, you know, if there isn't additional capacity, there isn't really anyone, you know, out there saying, hey, if you need help, come to us. And so, you know, and then it additionally, you know, affects the ecosystem, because then those community-based organizations also then don't have resources, you know, time to go out and find new funding streams and funding sources and, you know, see what else is available. And so that's just another way that kind of it all starts with those community-based organizations. And then, you know, again, the technical assistance and business support, as you can see, you know, from the anecdotes listed there, you know, one of the things that is huge, you know, is marketing. And I think, you know, one way to look at the impact of this pandemic is it was a specific event, but, you know, one call that we have, one need, that we are finding in our technical business support is what we could broadly describe as resiliency training, because we had the pandemic and it was a devastating, you know, economic event for small businesses. But, you know, what happens when there's a pipe that bursts, right? That's an unplanned for activity. What happens when there's road construction? Maybe a bad example here, but, you know, just saying, you know, then these are things that the businesses don't plan for. And, you know, to be able to train them to be more resilient for when the unexpected happens, you know, is sort of a new need that we have. And then finally, you know, we again have the need for money. We, you know, always need money, and there are barriers to accessing funds, especially for racially and ethnically diverse folks. And so, you know, one statistic from the ECI plan that I always just think is so compelling, you know, is again just returning to that need for 500 more minority business enterprise starts in our county to match the U.S. business rate. If we seeded each of those businesses with $5,000, it would cost about $2.5 million per year, or $7.5 million at $15,000. And, you know, it's a lot of money, but also when you just kind of think of what that potential impact is, you know, I think it's a really compelling statistic. So let's see. So
The
we.
slides, just by the way, we just shifted 2 slides.
Yep.
Back and forth to make it a little bit so complicated, so if you've been going back and forth in your packet.
It's like a flip book.
It's a flip book, yeah.
And so, you know, this next slide is kind of just, so what are we going to do about right? And how does the Small Business Reimagination Center, strengthen the small business ecosystem? What are the ways? And essentially, you'll see that it pretty much is a reaction directly to those, the opportunities that were identified previously. So, focus on building capacity. And so it is funding those community-based organizations. What else do we need? We need technical assistance. So again, expand the network of business advisors, really, become a leader, create the ecosystem, and improve the ecosystem for businesses in Ramsey County. Make sure that all businesses get what they need, without, having, and make it very clear where they need to go when, and then finally, partner with, other organizations to come up with financial tools, to get them, money when they're ready to grow. And so, the next slide here is just, kind of how do we get there, right? And so, one thing I think that, Director Collins has indicated in the past is we are exploring, talking to Dee about a potential with them to support this creation of this ecosystem. And so, where we'll start is with stakeholder collaboration and outreach. This will involve, having an advisory committee and coming up with processes for, referrals. I mean, we need to figure out, and just define sort of what is their reimagination center and like what is a potential look like. And so, we'll kind of start there, and then, next is that entrepreneur business and outreach, and that would include things like, design, market, and execute community-based outreach events, that are aimed at identifying eligible entrepreneurs, coming up with, a website, and making sure that we're attracting clients that are from racially and ethnically diverse communities. And then sort of the next two are really, delivering those services, delivering the cohort-based programming, whether it's a CEO, Business Institute programming, if it's online marketing workshops, really using the feedback that we've learned to create content that businesses, really need now, and then also deliver the one-on-one consulting to businesses. And then, we'll monitor progress. We will, evaluate how we're doing and figure out how we're going to move forward with this next. So,
Sorry, really, that. So I want to connect the two dots here between Commissioner Ortega and Reinhardt, your comments. So this is where we get at the, what does this look like? It is yet to be defined because we do want to co-create this. With that said, we know that there is a huge demand for advisory services, build capacity with those organizations to be able. I think the question of where that occurs is still potentially on the table. From what we've heard from Deed, we don't have a physical space like the West Side does, the West Metro. They have what they call these small business development centers, and 3 branches that are all physically located on the West Side through partnerships with and other 2 small business organizations. So although they technically are responsible for regional businesses, we don't have a physical location here, and they feel as though there is a deficit as a result of that physical space. Not being able to kind of come to kind of one center and sit down with somebody who. That's a long-term potential strategy that the board may want to explore once there's annual resources flowing into what is now could be this virtual small business room. So I just want to connect the two dots there.
Harry, that doesn't seem to me as a big barrier, though. I mean, couldn't we create partnerships to address that? I don't normally see one site. I could see a couple of sites on these metro areas through partnerships. And by that, I mean not the ones you've laid out. Aside from that, I mean, space is all over the place these days. Yeah. And there are so many institutions have plenty of space. It just seems to me that the first one that comes to my mind is Metro State. And how do we not only get the space, but garner some of their other resources? When I was teaching at Metro State for, a dozen years, we formed partnerships all over the place, drop of a dime. It might not have been in the business sector, but it's still the same cookie cutter. I'm just,
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think that's all on the table. Where the physical spaces, what types of advisory services, niche industries as well, that's going to feed into space around creative enterprises, and Commissioner Preston, talked about opportunities with the film industry, for example. There's all sorts of opportunities we're missing out on right now, and our hope is that the coalition will kind of really start to fill those gaps. That might shape where and how we locate space.
I can't help but think, when Ling assembled the Youth Advisory Council, entrepreneurship in particular, something they were super interested in, so it feels like there's a natural fit there, whether on advisory or even co-locating one of the sites with our workforce department. Flow. And so I assume, you guys talk all the time, but I assume there's, some work going on with workforce development in that way particularly, or,
Madam Chair, Commissioners, so entrepreneurship is really where workforce and CED, they look at it as a pathway to a career opportunity.
Right.
And we look at it as how can we, and so I think to your point that
Yeah, I agree with all of this, right? You can definitely create some partnerships that's already local, that's already doing this type of work. I know this type of work has been moving through the legislature for years, right? Really looking at making, like, women and BIPOC a priority, right? And just targeted populations with partnerships. You talk about a partner with deeds. A partner with deeds is like, give us some money, right? But not with all the bureaucracy that's there, because it is a lot. It's a lot. When you talk about the building capacity and the work, there's, legislation just funnel millions of dollars to, like, NDC, to, like, NEDA, right, and to the NEOS. They're doing this work. They're building capacity. They're working with small entrepreneurs. They do trainings. They do all of this type of technical assistance that is needed. I don't know who the coalition is. I'm trying to better understand this partnership that we have with Hennepin County, because I know Hennepin County too, and they kind of like operate. And because partners matter, who's leading matters, and how that works matters too. And so, I'm a St. Paul person, right? I see St. Paul. I don't see none of the suburban areas, right? Or see the greater need there. And I'm sure when you're trying to start a business, it's tough, no matter where you are. If you're a woman, person of color, it's even tougher, to get that. To survive past the first or second year is really tough, right? To even begin to see some building or some structure within that business is tough. But there are, I want to say, because I'm a St. Paul person, there are so many partners right here locally that you can tap into, right? Or get a table and bring a table together to get the best minds together about how this partnership can look between, whether it's the private sector or community-based organizations who's doing this work, and Ramsey County. What would that look like? Because they are the eyes and the ears, often, that are engaging with the small businesses, with, you know, the entrepreneurs, those, and building and shaping what that can look like. You know, whether it will be, I don't know what clues are doing this day around, you know, small business and entrepreneurs, or HAP is doing the work around small business entrepreneur, but there are really local entities that you can connect with, that brings that virtue to something more concrete, right? That people can, you know, sometimes you just, I don't know, I don't always live in a virtual world. I want to step into a building and talk to somebody face to face, right? And I think when you're definitely just thinking about a small business, you know, I like options too, you know, giving people options. But if we can find a way to, you know, make that concrete space a part of that, that would be like awesome too. But there are some great partners here that we can tap into, besides going over to Hennepin County. You're not wrong with Hennepin County. I like those folks, they're okay.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, Commissioner, just to clarify too, I think the coalition we're describing are those Ramsey County partners.
Okay.
They're exactly who you're talking about,
Okay.
that served our small business relief grant. Grants to our business community, but for that coalition. And
Okay.
so those organizations you've described will certainly be, not just at the table, but really leading the charge here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, Madam Chair, I was just curious, in the conversation that St. Paul, so this came up in the Joint Property Tax Advisory Committee, but the conversation around the reuse of downtown space, and they're particularly focused on the transition to residential from commercial uses. But to some of the earlier questions that have been asked here, I'm just curious, to what degree are we engaged with St. Paul on a conversation as they're looking at the downtown just physically transforming anyway? I mean, it feels like it could be a really good moment for entrepreneurism in our region.
I'm sure, Commissioners, it is a huge opportunity. I think that's a little bit down the road,
Okay.
until we get that coalition
Got it.
really on board and we get in the feel what this could potentially look like. And, you know, I've even chatted with Director Becker in terms of the space within the Osborne building, in terms of the lower level space that they currently lease out, maybe starting there. And so we've started this pretty big innovative hub right now for small business and entrepreneurs. But we just have to get we'll call it the programmatic infrastructure in place before we begin the conversation.
One last thing, Madam Chair, there's one spot you wouldn't want to wait, and Jen, hear me on this one. So they're going to the legislature with a proposal around a new type of tax credit for buildings to transform from commercial to other uses. And whether we want to be more thoughtful about that being slightly broader than just a residential conversion type tax credit, but it's like residential or in support of like small, I just think we should at least think it through before we see the tax credit get created and then we're constrained from being able to incentivize those uses. And like, that's in their platform for this year.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes, it is. With that said, nothing right now is prohibiting small businesses from.
Good. Okay.
From a zoning perspective, you know, whether it's one entity or 25. So I think it's just broadening it to allow for that residential.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's good.
I do want to get to the next.
So is that legislation that's been proposed, or?
It will be proposed this session. I don't know if it's been dropped yet, but it will be, and I don't think it's gonna be just St. Paul. I think they're trying to get a coalition of other, I mean, this is affecting the state and any business area.
Really,
Yeah.
yeah. I do want to get to the final slide here.
Well, one thing I would just wanted to add to what Carrie had mentioned, and I think, Commissioner Mann, you were, absolutely, this is the coalition, and I think we failed to probably provide you with a list of our coalition partners that we've used in the past. But that is one part, and I would just acknowledge that, like, I think Carrie referenced a couple of these organizations, and this is where it kind of comes back to what we learned and why it kind of separates into these little buckets, is that we have actually some growing organizations who have not had business as their core part of their business, but they've been providing outreach to businesses. Urban Village is a great example of this. It's a very culturally, you know, it represents the Korean community or supports the Korean community at the location near Rice and Larpenteur. But that's an organization that we intentionally, through the small business, we're like, we're missing here. We know that we're missing a cultural community here, and we need to find a partnership. The challenge, and they acknowledged it very quickly, we don't have business advisors. We don't have anyone who can write this grant for. And so we're going to need to lean on other partners. And I think this is part of that coalition. And I think part of the reason why you see a lot of the organizations that do have a footprint here in the East Metro, in Ramsey County, in St. Paul, like MEDA, like NEDA. I'm going to use a lot of acronyms that are very close to one another, Black Women's Wealth Alliance. But you know what? Their main hub is in Minneapolis, in Hennepin County. That's their central place. And so I think that's the call to action that I think we saw, was that not only do we need to like foster our organizations who want to kind of provide that next level of service, next level of support to businesses, but also kind of find a way to knit them together. You know, and we kind of say that sometimes it's the Ramsey County Reimagination Center, or Virtual Center, but it's the Reimagination Center of Ramsey County, using it as a geography at the end and a focus on what it is at the beginning, because I don't think that businesses are necessarily, especially individuals and communities who have had long distrust of government, are going to immediately think that Ramsey County is going to provide the best level of service. So that is, I think, really the building the coalition, using them to be, but they've also been fighting over the same resources for too long. And I think this is our opportunity to say, stop looking so inward and putting up walls, that we can like make stronger linkages between it to ensure that the business who might have a need in one organization can be linked up with another, and vice versa. So so I think Claudia kind of stepped through a number of the pieces related to the small business grant. You know, one of the next steps over the next couple weeks, you will see some actions before you. We are going to seek an approval of one additional FTE within our CED team. This is a large body of work, and I think we're finally recognizing how you know, we had 3 small programs that we could lean heavily on our partners. They're also looking back at us and saying, can you help support us a little bit more, i.e. Hennepin County, and saying, if you want to do more with the CEO Next and now CEO Now, we need a little bit more shared ownership of this. But
Talk about that, please. What does that mean?
What's that mean?
Yeah, agreement and then the amended agreement.
Yeah, so we have an existing, or we have a relationship with Hennepin County for the CEO Next program. It does need to be updated because it's, you know, we're coming to the end, or we've come to the end of that 5 years, and so we want to re-up it. I think it's been a really valuable piece to our portfolio of offerings. We'd like to tap in and incorporate the CEO Now into that program. You know, I think a central focus of that FTE, though, is around the Small Business Reimagination Center, ensuring that work and that coalition work happens. We'll formally accept that money, which you have not done yet, so we'll formally accept that here in the coming weeks. I think I'll let you go to the last one, but the one thing that we wanted to just you know, we're now a few years outside of small business relief. We haven't made a formal touch point with those businesses that we initiated an interaction with at transaction, not in a real substantial way. You know, sometimes they come back to us, sometimes they reach back out. But I think it's important for us to do a check-in, to see how, you know, it's not maybe like a health checkup, but see if they're still in business. See if that was, you know, we did an evaluation 6 months after we gave the money, but now we're, you know, a couple years down the way. Was it as meaningful as you said it was? Were you in need of services? And I think that will be actually a valuable experience. So we're going to do that work this summer to really inform this Reimagination Center too, because that is where the rubber meets the road in terms of what the businesses are looking for, and making sure that the organizations that might be providing resources and where those businesses who've come through the door once previously are linked. Sorry.
Madam Chair,
I was
Commissioner.
just gonna say that I think that that's really incredibly important. I'm surprised, although I'm surprised that we're not doing it, but if we don't have the staff to do it, we can't. So, I mean, it's kind of this vicious circle, but, I mean, most small businesses, if they're gonna, survive, that getting through those first couple of years is absolutely critical. So it sounds like, you know, kind of saying, okay, little child, get out of the crib and go, and then we'll see you in a little while. Because if they don't have that base, they need other support.
Madam Chair, just one other thing. I mean, I think it is important to put into context too, not only we didn't have the staffing support. I mean, we weren't planning on getting infusions of money, putting out through, like, this whole program got stood out on a whole cloth at a statewide level and passed through to counties. And so there's a part of it where this wasn't like one of the things we had started, which is why there hasn't been the same follow-up. It's not a disconnect here. It's like we ended up being the giver of small business grants in Ramsey County because the state needed pandemic aid relief.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I do want to just I do want to give you guys a break in between your necks. You know, Claudia has been toggling between small business support and the Park at River's Edge projects, and so this FTE would be solely focused on getting this off the ground and continue our kind of small business array of programming, if you will. Additionally, we don't want to create a program with the 1.5 congressional and create another funding cliff. So we will need to figure out an ongoing resource to ensure that these advisory services need to be supported. And that is the impetus for the modification to the HRA language that is positioned right now at the legislature to include the economic development of the flexibility. So even if it's $1 million or $2 million to sustain this kind of platform of advisory services, that we continue to sustain it year after year, so it's a reliable resource versus a one-time thing. Lastly, I do want to say, if we are going to have a future partnership with DEED, much like they do with the 3 satellite branches on the west side, there is some branding associated with DEED. Why is that advantageous? Because then we position ourselves funding, and that becomes yet another funding source to support this. But then we are restricted to calling ourselves kind of the Ramsey County Small Business, either Reimagination Center or Development Center, because the 3 on the west side are centers. And so if we want to stay away from that kind of vernacular, then we may want to rethink, you know, our partnership in that space and just call it something different, because that will be limited in terms of how we articulate what it is. With that, question.
Commissioner Shaw.
I have a question. So for the center, it needs to be an actual location that we have in the future, right?
It sounds like that could be a desire. I think it all depends on, again,
But for DEED, like DEED
for DEED,
requires.
it doesn't have to necessarily be a physical space.
Oh, okay.
I think that there are 3 physical spaces. But in this case, it can be a contract for services, and then with the future, you know, with the eye toward finding a physical location or location.
Okay. Madam Chair, may I just add one more thing too about just as you're building out the coalition, that you include, you know, of course, like the local chambers, you know, local ethnic cultural chambers. And then also in St. Paul, there are a lot of, you know, development partners. And then in addition to that, like more local, like pop-up ones. So for example, like the North End Development Team was one that I was a part of for a while. And then they had a Somali-speaking like coordinator who like did boots on the ground outreach to businesses. And then there are like district councils that have like kind of like an offshoot of like where their interests are, and they bring together different, you know, they used to have like, what is it, community development centers, CDCs, but a lot of that went away too. So some of the district councils have held on to some of that work. And then the other part that, as I'm thinking about this too, is just A lot of these funds that had been identified, I would say, like, you know, it's nothing, it's not anything like too new, you know, about like for the challenges of businesses, and that, you know, like there's a big one about like needing social media marketing support there, that, you know, maybe like this small businesses have to think of just a different model for like supporting that. And how can Visit St. Paul be a partner in that too, you know, or like other visitor centers be a part of that solution. And finally, I think there's the other one with like the East Side Funders Group too. That should be a part of that, as they're thinking about like supporting businesses and investing in the people that's on the East Side. Yeah.
I do think, just to follow up that, I think, I mean, there are organizations, and sub-organizations across the entire county that would really benefit from this, and I know the White Chamber, and there are other smaller groups too that are out there trying to make a difference in offering services. I do have one question, and I know you have a question as well. When you were talking about the legislation and the change that needed to be made, that sounds like that's not just for us, that's statewide?
No,
Just us?
just like we did before.
Okay. Okay. So do other counties or entities already have that? Okay.
Within the
That's-
metro, yeah.
So that shouldn't be a hard lift, should it?
Well, remember, we failed at this once before.
Well, but that was because we did it wrong.
Well, So we still have to do it right, and
Yes.
so there's still a lift.
Okay, yes, I get that, but
Yeah,
if we
but
were
not
the
as
first, it would be,
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as I've mentioned previously, you know, the political lift was that previously when we attempted an EDA, it was a new tax that every community had. In this particular case, we're looking to, you know, expand our existing levy authority to include small business resources. So it's not an additional dime on any taxpayer.
okay,
It's just within the scope of the HRA.
okay.
So it is different in that regard. With that said, each community will have to essentially pass a resolution opting in programming, which, you know, I think once we articulate it to them and they understand what this is and what it isn't, they'll say, oh yeah, we want the full array of programming available to us. It doesn't, if they say no for whatever reason, they still get access to all the other kind of conventional HRA programs.
Commissioner Martinson?
The more I think about it, I know we need to have virtual online resources, and I do feel like it needs to be a physical space at some point, especially because the same community we're targeting is the same community that suffers from inequities in our digital equity work. And so we're like, you know, I just think that we need to have some space where they can come in to access if it's a virtual, as we do that work, that we're not thinking in silos.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, this is one area that we have received a lot of feedback from the business resource. Metropolitan, the Alliance for Metropolitan Stability kind of heads, and they have said, because they've been reacting to Hennepin County's program, is a fully digital. They have said, you know, don't just create a digital platform. Do create a digital platform because you are trying to reach that younger business audience who only uses digital, but also make sure there are these physical, accessible, tangible spaces for communities to be able to convene, to sit down, to lay the paperwork.
I think we've got agreement around the table on that one. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
The lunch is on the table in the small conference room. You can grab your lunch, take a 15-minute break, and we'll reconvene in here.
Thank you.
And I just want to say,